Welcome everyone to the next webinar we have with Racing Prodigy here from AiM Sports. I'm going to turn this over to David, who has really put a lot of this together, obviously with another David that's been a friend of mine for many years, and have him kind of introduce the program, and then we will get started. So David, if you can give us a little bit about what we're doing here today.
Wonderful, Roger. Thank you. Yes, today we have 20 of our Prodigy Week drivers who came from the Prodigy Racing League. They're about to head to Atlanta next week at Atlanta Motorsports Park to get in the Radical SR1 on the main track there. And today, I just want to review what AIM's all about, data, how to read it, how to learn it, and to use it to become better drivers. So we really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through that.
Absolutely, love doing it. AIM is a big supporter of young drivers, all the way from karting and far into their driving careers. And now we do a ton of work with sim racing. So there's a pretty strong tie here. So I don't have a slide on this, so let's briefly start with that as we're looking at the opening slide here. The sim racing component, what we do is there is some our software is free, and then you can also then go to aimsports.com and just type, search for sim racing. There will be we have a whole area that's dedicated to the three main sim racing programs. Certainly iRacing and ACC and Assetto Corsa. The three main ones. We have tiny little programs that you can place onto your computer, and then when you're running your sim, the data will be at the end of the file. When you close out of it, the data file will be put onto your PC into a folder. When you open Race Studio 3, it will be loaded just like you've done a download from a car, and it's ready to go. So that is available for you. If you don't want to add the little piece of software in there, you can always go and grab the native file and drag and drop into Race Studio 3, and it will convert it automatically and be ready to go. So there's you have options of how you get that data in, but we're very strong in that, including what's become very popular now is using AIM hardware. We have steering wheels with paddle shifts, with lights and data loggers and displays built into it. We have data loggers that you can put on your sim rig with all the USB drivers, the correct USB drivers that bring the data coming from your sim racing information directly into our displays. So your shift lights work, your oil pressure, your tach, your speeds, all of that is coming in and being displayed on your AIM display. So that's available to sim racers as well. Been very popular, even so far as to some of our Smarty Cams, which is our video solution that ties in with our hardware. We can, and you see that here on the screen right here, the video camera. That's what we call Smarty Cam. That can actually be put on your sim rig as well, and you can see your hands and you can see your feet, your screens, and you can use that just as if you were in the car as well. So very strong tied to sim racing. Those of you, I know a lot of you are from that world. Keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Okay, perfect. Here, let's get started with just some basics. Number one, maybe just a little bit about today's agenda, where we're going to head. We're going to talk about the big three. I do a lot of things in threes, but what is data? What is data acquisition? What is data? Why use it? And how to use it. Really, there's our triangle of what we're going to look at and what we're going to work on. So keep that in mind. And then I have another concept. I call it the data concepts, but the steps you must take when you're looking at data. Always keep this in your mind. The first thing you're doing is looking for what happened. You're going to look at some data, and I'll mention this several times while looking at data, but you're going to look at what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen. We'll go a little deeper into that here in just a moment. The data analysis, data triangle. There's really three things you're always looking for in data as a racer. You're looking for driver performance, which for what you guys are doing, that's really your focus, and that's what we're going to focus on today is driver performance. But there's really two other big parts that folks are going to be looking at in the data. The second one is vehicle performance. We want to know when, what RPMs you turned and what the temperatures are. Is it understeering? Is it, is it notchy on the shifts? Does it have a miss? All of these kind of things. That vehicle performance side to get the vehicle faster is a big part of data. And then the third piece, which a lot of people don't use as much, or at least think of it as a totally third piece, but it really should be, and that's vehicle health. If you can't finish the race, you can't win the race. So the being able to catch things happening ahead of time we'll go into that just a touch with some stuff we'll look at today. But it's boy, if you can start to catch a charging system that is a little bit flaky ahead of time, and the last time you're on the track, and you see the alternator dropouts or voltage dropouts, or you see an oil pressure problem, which is a little bit odd. Boy, it's sure great if you can capture that in the data of the session before, get it fixed before the next one, and be ahead of the game and be finishing races. That's very, very important, obviously. And then data, we're going to go into some real data analysis examples. We're going to turn off the PowerPoint. We're going to jump into live data. I have some things to talk about it, but if you guys have some things that you might want to chat about, we will go that direction as well. So that's where we're heading today. Okay, a little bit about me, just for those of you that always kind of wonder, okay, how's this guy sitting here and talking to me about this? My name is Roger Caddell. I'm the AiM Sports here in the United States is the North America importer and distributor of AiM products for all of North America. So, and my job within there is the national training manager. I was brought in, gosh, 14 years ago now. I think I've been working here, and my job is to do things like this, right, and chat with people, and go to the track and keep myself up to speed with hands-on stuff, but also to teach people and help people and answer questions. I get um, 5 to 10 fairly complex emails a day of people looking at data in Race Studio, looking for analysis tips and tricks and understanding of maybe some better ways of looking at the data, or they can't figure it out. So that's what I do. And from the pictures you see there, I was about a 20-year off-road racer. In the upper left corner there, that's me on the on our right in the Olsen brothers car. I raced off-road for about 20 years, and the irony of all is every car that I raced, and I raced it all the way up to a low-level professional level. I was driving for other teams and making money at it in my last 4 or 5 years. The not a single one of them ever had a electronic display, a gauge of any sort. Off-road back then, I quit. I retired in 1996, and we had idiot lights, we called them, right, for the drivers, uh, and I had a low oil pressure and a high temperature. We ran a lot of Volkswagen motors and some of the stuff back then, so it was if the alternator quit, the air cooled quit, the air cooled part quits, right? So we had a light for that. But other than that, the irony of all of it is, in all of most of my motorsports career, I didn't have gauges. The upper right is that little Volkswagen Rabbit. We called them rabbits over here. That was a circle track car. Ran a short track ovals with the fellow that's standing there in front of the car. Passed away just a year or so ago. Mr. Hart, Ron Hart, good friend of mine, and he provided that car. He was an off-road guy and also a circle track guy. So he had me drive that car for a couple of years. Had a good time in circle track stuff. Way out of my element. I was used to dirt and lefts and rights and ups and downs, and then to go to a left turn only was a little bit of a learning curve. But I did enjoy it. Then my youngest son began racing, wanted to drive something, and we started with karting, and we went through karting, and then he kind of wanted to. He was a little bit bigger, not sure where he gets that, but he was a little bit bigger in life, and karting was he was beginning to be punished a little bit for the weight side of it at a higher level events. He was pretty good at it, but so we went to do some circle track stuff, what we call here in the States legends and bandoleros. There's a junior class called bandoleros for the younger drivers, and then you can go up to the legends and drive those. He did that for a couple of years, but he really liked that left turn, right turn stuff that all of you love. And so that lower left corner is a Mazda Miata that we as a family purchased, and he started driving in 2005. And in 2006, it had become a national class in the SCCA here in the United States, and became a class at the runoffs. And darned if he didn't go and win that in the Spec Miata. That was the first car we had a lot of data in, and that was a picture of him winning the runoffs in 2006 at Topeka, Kansas. With that, we became into the Mazda Motorsports development program, where one of the Davids has a history of as well. And he was the very first one of the drivers that Mazda brought into the closed wheel sedan type racing for driver development. He was the very first one that won that. that started a whole career of running sports cars and Mazda MX-5 Cup. Went on to do some Mustang Challenge, a bunch of spec stuff, where I really fine tuned my skills of understanding data, because everything he ran in, uh, almost his entire career, was a spec class, and almost all of them had AIM data loggers in them. And so I was really deep into figuring out, and that's how I learned a lot of these things that we're going to talk about today. And to the bottom right, becoming hired by AIM and to start doing training classes all over the North America. I've been as far south as Monterrey, Mexico, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and then well up into Canada, Montreal, and of course the entire United States. So the lots of training and support, and with the pandemic we've been sitting home doing a lot of more videos and training in this way. So it gives you maybe a little longer than what you might have wanted, but it gives you an idea of the background of I'm not just an engineer that comes in and starts talking about data, but lived the racing side first, and then the data has been applied to it. And I think there's a deep power to that for me, the full understanding. So what is data? Why are we all here today, right? The I look at data as there's different methods, right? Maybe that's a picture of me there in the upper right, but seat of the pants, right there, that is data. You are very valuable in this process as a driver. The sometimes you can help the data person get in there and figure it out, because you say, hey, it's really wobbling or really loose or really doing some funny stuff under braking. Well, that just took an entire lap of 100% and brings it down to about 30% of the data that the data and the driver coach are probably going to look at. So that seat of the pants is very important. Keep that in mind. That is a form of data acquisition. You're getting it in real time, and then it's your job to bring that out and share that with the engineers you're working with. Stopwatch. Hey, we're in motorsports. This is a performance game we play, right? And so the stopwatch and the amount of time it takes to make each lap is a big part of it. And if it gets better, the car's getting better and the driver's getting better. If it's getting worse, we need to know that, and the stopwatch is a big part of data. Of course, maybe sometimes the drivers may want to watch video. That's another way of learning. Video is an important data tool. You can see things. Sometimes it's a little harder to find in the data, and where you can see it in the video, some corrections, some missed apexes, whatever it happens to be. Video is a very important data tool, especially what I call smart video, and that's the video from the Smarty Cam. We're going to talk about that. It's got data embedded into the video. We'll talk more about that. And of course, the thing we're going to spend the bulk of our time here on is data acquisition systems. Not just just a tiny bit on the hardware we'll talk about a little bit, but mainly the software. Obviously, that's where you're going to be spending your time. So let's see. What is data? I see it as it's just another tool in the toolbox. It's just like an engine or a shock dyno, or other tools that you may have. That data system measures and records performance. And what's cool about that is when you're looking at it, it's not just vehicle performance in the data, the initial embedding of that data when you're looking at it in the screen capture down below. It's just vehicle performance. It just shows a speed trace, maybe an RPM trace, and where you're faster or slower, right? It's pretty dumb right at first, right? It doesn't know if it was vehicle that got faster. It doesn't know if the driver got faster, but just overall performance. That's all it knows at first, right? That's all it displays to you. But there's sensors gathering data, and stores all of that data and the dynamics of what the vehicle is doing. That's the hardware side. The software then allows us to then begin to break that down and understand, was it the driver that jumped in there first and improved the time, something that the driver did, or was it the car that the team got the car a little bit better? Was it a combination of both? That's where the software becomes a very powerful tool if you understand it and begin to be able to focus in on certain things. And that's what we're gonna work on that and take a look at it and see what that looks like. Yeah, I always kind of go back into this under the same what is data acquisition. Understand that there's a configuration side that we do in the pre-session, and there's a data analysis piece in post-session, which we're going to focus on here almost exclusively. But that pre-session stuff, it kind of sets the bar and sets the table for all of the channels being named correctly, and all of those things, and scaled correctly, and making sure the sensor data is working. We do all that in the pre session with Race Studio 3. Then you go out and run the run, come back in, you download the data. That's where we start to use the stuff that we're going to look at today, whether it be measure plots, the squiggly lines, or XY plots and channel reports, and all these different things that we have available to you, depending on what you want to get. So that's where we're going to spend a little bit of time today. So to kind of close that, what is data? What is data acquisition? Well, data is knowledge. It's that information that we're gonna learn a little bit more about here in just a moment. And knowledge equals speed. How fast do you want to go, right? If you only have a speed trace, boy, you can get about 80-90% of the way there with a simple GPS based logger, right? And it's just giving you speed, lap times, maybe some lateral and longitudinal G's that GPS can calculate. And that gets you a long ways there. But if you want to dig in deeper, and we're going to look at some examples of that here in a bit, where you can see a little bit more. So data equals knowledge. Why use it? Well, it's fairly self-explanatory, I suppose. And it's to constantly improve. We want to improve you. You want to improve you. Everybody wants you to be better. We want to constantly improve the driver performance, the vehicle performance, and the vehicle health. When you add those three together with some fancy calculators and all the stuff we do, you get results, right? So keep that in mind as you're using this. It's use the tool in the right way, and you will continuously improve. So keep that in mind, just like everything else you do in your racing life. How to use it, kind of where we're here for today, right? A couple more little charts and slides, and then we'll kind of jump into some real stuff. But one last thing on the hardware, this is the basic steps of how you use data, how data is used in a race car. There is some hardware that's involved. It needs to be designed, it needs to be installed, it needs to be configured, calibrated. That's not something you do. We'll take care of the bulk of that designing and getting the systems up and running the way they need to be. Somebody on the team probably has installed it, configured it, calibrated it. The use part is where you step in as the driver. And then as you come in, after you use it, we need to download it. And this is the meat of what we're going to talk about today, and what's going to happen at the track. This little circular process right here, time and time again. Go out on the track and use it, create the files while you're out there running. We're going to download the data, and then we're going to analyze it. And we're really going to do the three things that we've kind of already touched on. What happened, where did it happen, and why did it happen? Really, those are the three things we're going to do. And then you notice here that we've just got a loop back to the beginning one. And this is just going to happen those 7 or 8 times during the day, depending on the practice or the test or the race weekend. You're going to do these same things time and time again. Of course, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of stuff happening, but that's the basic idea of how to use data, the basic steps. I put a lot of this together into one sheet. And this has taken me years. I started off, it was like 3 sheets of bigger picture stuff, and then I continue to bring this down. And this is really the concepts on a one pager. What happened? Many stop there. If you watch people that use data, sometimes maybe they've got a solo, just an AiM GPS based logger in the car. They'll bring the data in, they'll look at their speed trace versus their driver coach, or their speed trace versus yesterday's run. Hey, I was faster here, I was slower here. Oh, okay, I got it, but move on. So many stop right there. But what you got to dig into is, where did it happen? Not only did it happen, you'll start to see trends. Maybe it's always under braking. Maybe it's always in mid-speed corners or low speed corners, or the acceleration isn't as good as it was yesterday. And that's where you're seeing the speed differential. Where did it happen is very important to try to fix it, right? And then the next one, of course, would then be, why did it happen? Was it a brake pad change? Was it you finally figured out that corner, or you lost a little something, you're trying something, it didn't work right through this series of S's, or whatever it happens to be? Why did it happen? Understand that. That's the toughest one of all of these. And that you may get to the why, and you may answer the first why. Well, you were slower in turn 3. Why did that happen? Well, it was because of the entry. Okay, well, why did you enter, wider? Well, because of da 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 da, right? You continue down this why path until you get to the point where you know what to either change or fix or whatever it happens to be. It's not a simple why because I was slower. Nope, nope. You got to dig a little deeper. And let the data take you to where you're going. Don't make up your mind ahead of time. And then there's one bigger probable additional question that needs to be asked. Is it the vehicle or the driver? You're slower in turn three. Part of that why is the driver, let's say the car is loose in. The car is oversteering as you enter a corner. You got to ask yourself the question: is the driver reacting to the vehicle when you turned in as a normal, smooth hands, and you're on the brakes, and then the car just steps out on you as you're entering? Is the driver is reacting to the vehicle's movement at that point, right? And then you want to the next question is, or is the driver creating the vehicle's movement? Did the driver come in, throw a bunch of rear brake bias to it, step on the brakes, and give it a whip on the steering wheel and created the vehicle's oversteer? These are a critical component to the why. Always be thinking of that, and I'll show you a couple of little tips and tricks as we get into some live data to we can zoom in on the data far enough that if a car is loose, if a car is accelerating, if differently, we can go back and look at the last tenth of a second before the process happened, and you can start to forensically understand what was the start of it. Right? Was it just not enough rear grip, or was it that the driver did something right to make it happen? We'll talk a little bit about that. The money channels. I focus on this a lot. Uh, Lap times and speed, they are the money channels. They are what you should be focusing on when you first look at the data. There's nothing that's more important than what your lap times are and what your speed is. That everything else is very, very important. Not to downgrade the rest of those channels, because all of those channels are what are making the lap times and speed be what they are. So all of those other channels strongly support the money channels. But really, your initial quick view, if you had a screen set up in your data analysis, you should have a speed trace and having the ability to look at multiple laps and bring them up against each other and quickly understand where one lap was faster. Those other additional channels help you dig into the where did it happen and why did it happen kind of a thing. And then I've already mentioned it once, but the data analysis triangle, a very, very important part. I tend to read my data, look at data, analyze to not be overwhelmed. I say, you know what, for the next 5 minutes of looking at data, we're going to put aside the vehicle performance. We're going to put aside the vehicle health. We're going to look at data with a mindset of where was the driver at and what can we do to help the driver perform better. So driver performance for the next few minutes. Get rid of all the rest of those things. Don't have oil pressure up there. Don't have fuel pressure. They just muddy the screen. Work on one thing at a time. I find that to help me not be overwhelmed by the data. So keep that in mind. How to use it with some live data analysis. That's where we're gonna head off to. I'm gonna check the chat here, see if there's something that we might want to do. How does AIM differentiate from the race logic stuff? Mainly we use V boxes here in the UK. I do understand that. In reality, I'm not going to go into the differences, but of hardware or software. But what I will say is data analysis is data analysis. In reality, the stuff we're going to talk about today, while I'm going to show it to you on AIM, and I happen to believe that AIM is superior in many ways. That's just the way that I am. But the concepts are the same whether you're using VBox, whether you're using Motec, whether you're using any of the different products. The things we're going to talk about today, the bottom line of comparing data traces and understanding what to look at is the same depending on the software that you're using. So we differentiate. Typically, we're pretty good about keeping stuff current and moving forward. Pricing is obviously there. We did really well during the pandemic and keeping hardware coming out where other folks had a real problem with that. So we're real proud of how AIM handled that. So just a little bit, but in reality, we won't talk too much about the different products, but we will use AIM obviously in Race Studio to show, but the concepts work in any form of data. So with that said, let's bring up Race Studio 3. The Race Studio 3 is a continuously evolving product. Make sure that when you download it, you're going to get the latest version if you don't already have it. Latest version right now is 3.6702. Working all the time with the software team to create enhancements and bug fixes and all of that. If you download and open up, and a month from now you reopen Race Studio 3, this little blue cloud in the upper right corner, that is our download or update page. I will go there real quickly just so you can see it. When you come in here, you have all of the different hardware firmwares that are available, and at the top is the version of Race Studio 3. If you have anything that is updated since you've last brought that computer on and had it connected to an internet source, this will have a big blue arrow down, pointing down that there's downloads available. We will go, Race Studio 3 goes out and checks the servers. Only that little bit. We never download anything onto your computer. And then even when you click on this and you come in here and you see a new version, it'll say new over here. You can just download the updates and not install them, right? So we're asking you every step of the way what you want to do. Data privacy is very, very important to AiM. So very, very important in Europe where AiM is written. And so that's it follows a lot of that same stuff. So keep that in mind. It's always available to you to update. Updates are always for free as well with all of our firmwares and all of our softwares. So you'll always have the ability to get the latest and greatest thing. Okay, here we are. Let's go over the brief tour of the screen just so you know where we're going to go. But I always kind of start with this screen, right? It's a simple measures graph, what we call a time distance graph, and it is nothing more than you can have time or distance here across the bottom, and the start line is over here at the left edge, and then it goes through the lap, and then the finish line is here on the right edge, right? And it's nothing more than whichever channel you want to turn on and bring up here. These are the channels I have displayed over here, but all the rest of these channels are active. So if you look at like the left rear damper, right? You can see the number is 04. If I come over here and I'm moving this, all of these values are becoming updated wherever the cursor's at. And so these are active as well, but these are the only ones that we're looking at up here in the upper, actually displaying in the screen. Video is another big part of what we do. If you have a SmartyCam, we don't bring in any other brand of video and sync it in the way that we do with our SmartyCam. The SmartyCam is cabled to your logger. It gives it power, and it also gives it all of these. If I make this a little bit bigger real quickly, it also these are user definable. These graphic items that are on the video, a track map with a dot that's following it around based on GPS that's coming from the logger, RPM, speed, lap times, brake and throttle, G-forces, all are being transferred from the dash in real time to the video, being overlaid to the video in real time while you are driving around. Right when you're done, you can pull the chip out of the logger, put it into the computer, and you will see all of this is already done. There's no post-processing of anything. It's done in real time with these overlays. And this video and this data file, since they're from the same car at the same time, they're tagged together in such a way that if you import both of these into Race Studio, it automatically links them together. Of course, they're synced. And now whenever I move the cursor, it is exactly, the video is linked to that, and you can see exactly right where they get to that apex point, and we can see that, we can pick up on that. And so if you're a visual learner from watching video, or if you're more engineering minded and you want to see the squiggly lines, we have both that are there available for you. So that's pretty interesting. So I've also got up here, I've got gear position, I've got throttle position. So the Radicals sometimes have a little bit of an odd naming structure on some of their data files, but you can figure it out pretty easy. TPS is throttle position. We've got a brake pressure. We've got a lateral G's, just some stuff I've thrown on here to kind of play with. And we can add channels and take channels away very easily. And down here in the lower left, in this case, you'll see it, I think, in some other slides later, other live data later. I've got the track map, and you can zoom in on this and see exactly where you are on the track. You can see it here as well, but over here you can see it as I drag back and forth. There's the little red dots going back and forth, exactly where you're at on track is right where you are on this track. And we can actually change the background images. If Google didn't have we default to Google, but if Google didn't have a good image of the track you're at, and maybe Bing has a better image, you can change the image very quickly by this little tiles button. So there's just a ton of power here for you to connect to. This, of course, does need a internet connection in real time to get. We're picking up those background images in real time. We don't store them locally. So if you this red AiM logo up there at the top shows that we are connected to the internet, it would be gray if you're at the track and not connected. At that point, your track map would look like this, and you can still zoom in and see where you're at, but the background image won't be there. Just to give you an idea of what it would look like. So don't be concerned when you show up and there's no image in the background. It's because you're not connected to the internet. Okay, so there's any number of different ways that we can look at data. Again, if you have something specific you think you might want to look at, make sure you throw it into the chat box. I'm glancing over there occasionally. I've got can AiM measure wheel speed, rotation, and notice specific wheel lockup during braking? My first demonstration I was going to talk about was a little bit about braking. I haven't dug that in, but let's look at it and see. I don't know if this data has wheel speeds in it. The direct answer to your question is absolutely yes. If the car has wheel speed sensors, either in the CAN data stream from the car, or we can put additional rotational wheels, digital wheel speed sensors on the car and get wheel speed coming directly from the car. So if I come in here and I just type in speed into this, there looks like there's a front wheel speed on the car, but that tells me it probably wasn't hooked up or was broken, the 0 mile per hour. So if I move this around, I'm moving it around, and that 0 is not changing. So the pretty good chance that it is installed, but it's not connected and not being fed. It's also being fed, it looks like, directly into, by the R prefix, is data that's coming from the ECU. So this one here probably has a place for it coming into the ECU, but it just wasn't connected or was broken. So yes, the answer to that is yes, but maybe we don't see it in this data. Okay. Can brake pressure be converted to PSI to kgs or whatever it happens to be? Absolutely. And let's talk about that real quickly. Since I have brake pressure up here, when you hover over any channel, you'll see this little cogged wheel. You're going to see this cogged wheel all over in Race Studio 3. There it is for more options up here. And if we were to jump out to the sessions database, there's cogged wheels everywhere. All those is all settings and changing, the ability to change things in it. So for the brake pressure, I'm going to click on the cogged wheel that's right next to it. It's going to bring up a panel that is our channel settings for that specific channel. And Race Studio 3, Race Studio 2 wasn't as powerful with this. You could do it a little bit in the configuration side, but Race Studio 3 allows you to change it in the units in a single test. You can come up here and bar or PSI. If the data file was in kilograms or whatever other units of pressure, we can get those. Those would be here as well. But right now we're only giving it to you in bar or PSI here. The other way to do it is, let me exit out of that. In the actual, oops, let me get out of here. Come up to it's going to mess with me. Let's see. It's this one here. This menu here just changed in this last version. So open up settings, open profile. I think this is the one. No, it's not. Darn it. I'm at a maybe it's this one. Nope. Boy, that's a brain fart. There's an icon that allows us to come in and change all of the channels that are available to us. It's right in here. That allows you to go in and change all of your options for units across the board in all of your data files. So you can go in, open it up, and go to the channels themselves. These are different settings for colors, and when you bring up laps, what order what the colors will be for each additional lap you open, for runs that you open, what the default is. I've only got one run open. There is plot color schemes where you can tell it what's happening. There's another option that is available to go in and change all of your units to be all metric type units or SAE or whatever it happens to be. So you have that option available to you as well. The so that is doable. Yes. So perfect. Thank you, Eduardo. I'm not sure I said that right. So there's that as well. At the track, will we need a personal laptop for data analysis, or we can take data on a personal laptop for personal, or can we take data on a personal laptop for personal analysis? Either way, the Race Studio 3 is free. It is a PC-based, Windows-based software only. So if you have a Mac, you'd have to have the emulator and run and load Windows. So we don't work on any of the tablets or any of that. It's Windows-based. You can easily take the files and take this exact same file and put it on multiple machines. You're going to download it on one. It's going to be sitting there. It's a single file. You're going to put that on a card or a thumb drive, go over to your other machine and drag and drop it into the main database. When you're in here and you have a file on a thumb drive, you drag it and drop it into this area where the sessions are. It will just automatically load it, and it will show up in the list over here of tests that are available to view on multiple computers. So that always is available to you as well. The Michael, let's start with. I'm going to get right there with you. That's the first one we're gonna look at braking and take a look at brake balance and some other stuff. So let's take one more moment and look at the bigger picture here, and then we'll start jumping into some actual data. Across the top, you see all these tabs. When you first get AiM, I think there'll be 3 tabs by default, right? And you as a user can come in and by clicking on some of the core functionality of Race Studio 3, we can add a suspension analysis. We can have the track map be added. We can do a bunch of things, or we can create custom ones, which is kind of what I've done here a little bit. And I've got these tabs already built. You can download in the links I put earlier in the chat box, or for those of you watching later, in the description of this YouTube video, the links are down there where you can download a user profile, load it onto your Race Studio 3, and it will look exactly like these with the tabs I've already built for you. So if that's a shortcut for you to get started, go ahead and do that. Here's all the tabs. And if I want to look at braking, I have set up one that is already designed for braking information. So if I just click on that, you'll notice that it looks virtually the same, but maybe I've loaded different channels. In this case, I have maybe even a different layout for different things. We're going to go over a couple more of those tabs here in a moment. But in this case, I typically like my speed to be across the top. It's my core of knowing where I'm at on the track, the short acceleration zones, the valleys where you're at the apexes of corners. I just like the speed trace to be at the top. In this case, the very next level down, I've got pressures. In this particular data, the car had front brake pressure and it has rear brake pressure. The car also has, if it didn't have it in the logger, we could do it as a math channel inside of Race Studio 3 pretty simply, but it also has bias. So here is, there's a math channel happening on the logger in real time when the car was out on the track right here. But it's doing the math real quickly and looking at this 275 PSI to the front, 237 to the rear. And if you do the math to that, it's a tenth of a second, back or forth. It takes a little bit of time to do the math on board, obviously, but 54.7% front brake bias. So it's showing it to you. Your question, I think, was something to the effect of data analysis, but will brake balance or anything else be adjustable? The data logger is 100% passive on that side. We are seeing what happened. There is nothing that I can do right here to change it. Obviously, it's already happened. And the AiM data logger on board, there isn't, in the stuff that we sell typically right now, we're getting a little bit more on the upper end with some CAN outputs and some power outputs, where you could probably do some switches to change. If you had a solenoid on your brake bias apparatus on the car, we could probably trigger that from an AiM device, an AiM steering wheel, or buttons on a steering wheel. But typically what we're talking about today is seeing the results. And then you would say, post race, or you'd have it as an item up on your display when you're on the brakes. You could look down and see in the middle of braking, you could show that it was 54.7%. And if you know that hey, I want a little bit more rear percentage, a little less front percentage in this case, of brake to get the car to rotate a little bit better going in. Hey, to pull this thing, turn left is typically for less bias. Give it a couple of turns to the left to get that front bias down more to 50-50, get a little bit more braking to the rear. You can actually have that on the display, but it's manual on your part. What the data here is showing us is what happened. And then if we just want to study just a minute, it's kind of interesting. I'm going to go back to the time distance graph I had a moment ago, just to as an example of how to look at some braking data. I'm going to zoom in on this is Atlanta Motorsports Park where you're going to be, I understand, next week from what David said. And there's a hard braking zone. There's a couple of hard braking zones, but there's one that's the main one, and that's right here at the end of the front straightaway, just past the start finish line. There is this big drop in the speed trace, right? There's other ones there, but none of them are as large, right? So whenever I want to look at braking and see what the performance of the car is, I'm probably going to start with this bigger one right here, right? So I'm going to zoom in on this guy here. There's a couple different ways to do it in our software. Number one, I use the scroll wheel on my mouse quite a bit, and put the cursor, and it will scroll around where the cursor's at. So I put the cursor there. I'm going to wheel in just a little bit and start to zoom in on it. If it's not quite right, we can always come down to the bottom and pull that data file over and see that braking a little bit better. I'm going to zoom in even more because we're going to really, what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen, right? Okay, we're going to look at a braking zone. Let's see what this driver did. Let's break it down a little bit piece by piece and understand. Again, one lap in real data analysis, you'd probably bring up 2 or 3 laps. You don't want to base everything on one specific, 3-second part of one lap, right? So we'd bring up a second or third lap. But for training reasons, we're going to look at one lap here to begin with, at least, so you can see it. Okay, so here he is, the driver coming along, and we can see him over here. Let me make that a little bit bigger so we can even see the car a little bit better. We're driving down the track, and right about here you can see, but the speed trace goes up, speed trace goes down. Braking has commenced, right? The interesting thing is we also have the throttle position and we have brake pressure. So what are a couple things we would want to do if I was sitting down with a new driver right off the bat and we're working on technique? I want to know, one of the first things we want to know is this coasting thing, or how aggressive is the driver on full throttle to full braking. There's a time frame there that driver coaches will look at a lot. Drivers want to know about. We want to look at the time that it takes you get from full throttle to applying and then building up your brake pressure and being at that full brake. And you start to kind of study that on the car you're with and the way the pedals are laid out and the way everything is, and if you're getting better or worse. So we can come up here, we can bring the cursor right there, right? You can see it right there. And you can see that I put the cursor right when the driver was going to drop off the throttle. Don't let the numbers concern you. For whatever reason, this data file, 60% is full throttle. You can see how it plateaus at the top, and it's the shape we're looking at, not as necessarily the numbers. So keep that in mind. Here's where the driver went to lift off the brake, and down here we can see the brake pressure building. What is the time and the distance on track? Distance doesn't matter as much, but fun to look at though. You can see that, boy, just visually, real quickly, you can see that he's just about ready to stop, release the throttle, and boy, look at how quickly the brake is coming up. Clearly, to me, a left foot, a left foot braker, you cannot get your foot from throttle to brake over quite that quickly. So I'm making the strong assumption here that he's a left foot braker. And then what we want to do is then, if we look at the cursor is at 0.83. Let's call it 8.4, right? Make mental math in my head a little bit easier of where the driver is in time. This is the start finish line. This blue line is always shown in the race studio as the start finish line. So just past the start finish line, the drivers applied the brake, got off the throttle at that point, 140 feet down the road. And then if we come over here and put the cursor right where 0.84, and then we put the cursor right here where the brake pressure, his maximum brake pressure for this particular braking effort, at 0.99. So 35 to 1, 65, 100, something like that. 65 thousandths. The very, pretty respectable, right? look at that in your own data, see how fast your feet are, see how much you're either on the throttle or you're on the brake. That transition, while one person is in the midst of taking a half a second to get off the throttle, get off the brakes, get the brake up to the peak amount, there's a large gap and a large change in position on the track. So keep that in mind. We wanted to look at that. Let me give you an even easier way to not be try to do mental math on the fly here in front of a bunch of people. I'm going to zoom in even a little bit more. I'm going to pull that over to the middle so we can see it. I'm going to put the cursor where the throttle starts to drop. And we have a tool up here called the delta function. And it's nothing more than a measure tool. And if I click on that, it's going to set that as the anchor point. So put your cursor where you want to start. Click on that. Now the software is anchored, that one there, waiting for you to click for a second point of where you want to measure to. So I'm going to put the cursor right about here. I'm going to click. You see now there's two lines, two vertical lines, and up here in the top, the right hand side, if the cursor's on this side, it's on the right, it's showing that the amount of time between these two clicks is right here, and the number of feet the car traveled is right here. That is very, very quick, by the way, just so you know, uh, a tool for you. And it doesn't even need to be for brakes. It could be how long you were in a corner. Maybe you look at how long were you at G's and you wanted to kind of know, hey, I was in this corner for 4.6 seconds. My average G's were X, whatever it happens to be. The delta function, very, very powerful. So keep that in mind. I'm going to turn that off. If you missed on the first one, you could come over here with your cursor and adjust the first one to right there, and you can always click in here and adjust the second one and get the data just perfect if you didn't click the first time. So delta function, very, very powerful in the software. I see some questions coming up. I will jump out to those in just a moment, but I wanted to talk about the rest of this braking zone. I see one question there: throttle spikes, are they blips generated by downshifting? And Nick did answer that as well. Again, I don't know the cars well, but certainly looks like a yes, right? They're pretty consistent, and they're about the right amount for a nice little blip on the downshift. The other thing you can do on that is start to look at where did they happen, right? And you can see the blip is happening right when the downshift is happening, which probably means the hand on the shifter is what's triggering that through the onboard systems to make that happen. And if I put it there, you can see it's exactly where the downshift starts to happen. If you put it there, that one's just a tick different, but maybe this one is a little higher. Maybe he did use a little bit of foot on that one as well. But little things like that, you can start to line up items that are happening and maybe even understand how it happened, even if you didn't know. But let's talk about, let's be a little bit, this driver of this data is pretty darn good. They gave me this data. I'm having to search a little bit for things to help the driver with, but I do see one in this particular brake zone. Look at how the driver went up on the brake pressure, and then there's this drop just a little ways into it. It is timed right with a downshift. Now, was it related to that? We would want to look at maybe another lap or two of data to put that on there. But in your eye, you should be, if you're looking at your own data or somebody's working with you or you're coaching others, boy, this brake pressure should, in a perfect world, assuming smooth track and no humps and world racing happens, right? But in a perfect world, this should come up and you should have your highest brake pressure right here at application, and it should go along typically a little bit, and then it'll come down here and dissolve down to nothing. What this driver has done, and your eye should see, there might be a good reason for it, I do not know, but you can see that the driver applied brakes, held it, and maybe hit it a little bit harder. That's a pretty small change right there. But then there's this dip and this fall off. And it happens to be right with the first downshift. I don't know if it's related yet, but boom, boom, drops from a high of 200 or 340 psi down to 240 psi. I mean, that's about a 30% drop, right? So there's that is a lost opportunity. That is nothing more than the driver could have went 10 feet farther if they kept that braking pressure up and then had a nice decay down to where they start to turn in, and we can see exactly where the driver starts to turn in because of the lateral G's. We have our brake pressure up. This was 100% straight line braking up until where I've just put the cursor, because the laterals are at 0. There's no force left or right, and we can also see that in the video. And right here, you can see the car start to pull away from the curb here on the right and heading down towards the apex. And you can see the G-forces building. So all the way up to here was straight line braking, and what should have happened is it should have come up. I don't know what the peak is, but the driver knows, and we can assume that the driver was near it. It should have come up here. This should have come across and been flat. And then maybe just before the turn in started, it should start to decay when you start to trade braking G's for lateral G's. So this has a little bit of room for improvement, and just something that you ought to look at. That's one way of looking at it. The next one is the throttle on coming out of that corner. Look here, now we're going to focus on the throttle trace, the downshift certainly coming along, starting the turn in, and then right about here, the driver starts to apply some throttle. Rule of thumb, again, it doesn't happen always right off the bat. You have to learn the corner, you have to find the limits. But when you apply throttle, the goal always is don't apply throttle until you can apply it and not have to come back off of the throttle. This just means that the driver got in here, and right about down here at the apex, you know, here they've put some letters on the for teaching, I suppose. But if we look at that a little bit closer, that's pretty close to where the driver probably is apexing. That is where nearly where the maximum G's are. There's a little bit of here right at the end. He must have turned his hands a little bit more to keep the car from getting going off on the outside. But the apex is probably back about here. You can see the driver tried to apply throttle and then had to release the throttle, got up to about 25% of the max of 60. So, you know, that's probably 35-40% throttle in real life, and then had to jump all the way back down to about 10%, and then was able to, you see this climb up to full throttle. This right here is nothing more than the driver was just being, and by the way, it's your job to be greedy. Your job is to try to get after the throttle as early as you can, and then hold it. In a perfect world, this would have started to come up, and this would have just continued on up to the point when it would take full throttle. Whenever you see this having to release, what that does to the car is you're partway through the corner, that you've set the car in the corner, you've started to apply throttle, that starts to rock some weight back to the right rear, and either the car started to understeer, or his eyes told him that he was going to run out of track on exit at the speed he was, and he decided to roll out of the throttle a little bit. And what that does is the car then releases some of the rearward weight because you got off the throttle. It will actually start to kind of put a little bit more weight up towards the front. That'll help with the understeer if it's there. And then he throttled up again, and now the car went back again. So you end up with this rocking horse feel inside of the car. The suspension feels it, at least it's happening so briefly and quickly to you, but you're loading and unloading different corners based on what you're doing with your feet. And that's a very important part. I do see a note here. The steering inputs data is better to analyze this. Absolutely. This particular car, if I were to bring up your steering angle, I'll just bring it up and show it. The steering angle in this particular car is broken. And so always your first bet in looking at the data for this initial driver piece, I want to know what the driver's hands and feet do. With it, and that's the simplest way you can think about it, and that tells you what you want. I want to know what the right and the left foot is doing, and that's typically throttle and brake. And I want to know what the driver's hands are doing. That's typically steering and possibly gear position, right? I want to know these things because the driver is making the car do certain things. The second best thing, if steering is not there, the second best thing that we want to look at to understand what the driver did is probably lateral G's. That's the reaction of steering. So that's the next step down. It'll be muddied a little bit, but it's the next best thing if the steering sensor is broken like this one is. So that's why I should have started with that, but that's why we're looking at lateral G's instead of steering, where we are looking at direct driver inputs on the rest of these. So good question, good comment. Thank you. That's a quick breakdown of some of the driver inputs on throttle, brake. We don't have steering, so we can't look at that. I want to briefly go over a couple of these other tabs. We've got about 5 minutes left to go or so, maybe a little bit longer, but I want to talk about just some brief data things you can look at. we briefly talked about braking, and just to show you a little bit about how you can set up different screens to focus on different things. I've got a vehicle health report that I tend to follow a lot. I'm gonna zoom out to a full lap so you can see that a little better. This is nothing more than, maybe it's not something you do. Maybe you're a driver coach and you do some of this with some of your clients as well as part of your driving. We want to know everything that's happening with that car, and our channels report sets it up in such a way that we can look at and add different channels if we want to. We can add any channel, and including, min, max, averages, all these different ways of looking at the data. But what I've done is I've just set up my maximum speed. Time and distance for each lap is a given. You're going to have that in your channels report. These are user definable from here over. Maximum speed for each lap. How fast was the car, and at the end of the fastest straightaway? What is your maximum RPM? Anytime did you miss a shift? Did you reduce your shift points? And it's just going to show you the maximum RPM for each lap. And then down here at the bottom is the average of your maxes, and then a maximum value for even on your in and out laps. But in this case, it happens to be what happened on lap 3. You did a 94.66 in that case. The minimum value, standard deviations. Fuel pressure. Uh, Here are the minimum fuel pressures that the car is seen at all on each lap, and then the average of them and the minimum and maximum. Engine oil pressure, EOP, engine oil pressure, the minimum oil pressure. Whoa, look at that one, 37.6. Your eyes should be going, huh, I wonder what happened there. Always, what happened, where it happened, why did it happen? Always remember. Let's come back to that one in just a moment. Uh, ECT happens to be engine coolant temperature in this ECU protocol that they've put out. Here's your maximum water temperature in Fahrenheit in this case, but we could change that to see if we wanted to. You can see it slowly building temperature through the laps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 in our world. There was an out lap as well. And maybe you want to keep your eye on your alternator. So we look at throw up minimum voltage, right? That's not changing. That looks good. The water temperature looks what should be happening. The fuel pressure looks pretty good. The only one I've got a hint on here is oil pressure. I'm going to show you a quick shortcut if you use AiM data. Down here, I've included the squiggly lines or the time distance graph with these, so we can see on lap 4 is the one we have active. We can see over here that lap 4 is the one that I'm showing down here, but we see all of them in the channels report. I've turned it on where the min max visuals are on for each of the channels. What it is you look at, we'll just use speed because it's the top one. The red value is the highest speed. It's shown with a red dashed line showing you exactly where the highest value happened. Put the cursor over here. You can see that. The blue is the minimum value for that channel, in this case, miles per hour speed. There's your slowest corner in the entire data set. And then the green one is the average for whatever we're viewing. So for this entire lap, the average speed of from left edge of this screen to right edge is 77. If I zoom in, I just zoomed in quickly. The mins and the maxes have changed because it's all of these are based on what you're viewing in your screen. Keep that in mind. It's an important distinction. The now it's 70 miles per hour average for this piece of the track, and if it's from here going backwards all the way over to right about here in the S's. So keep that in mind if you want to zoom back out to a full lap. That little icon does it. The one I'm concerned about is this 37.6. Where did that happen? What happened? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? 37. That's way down from everywhere else on the oil pressures. There's a couple ways to get there. I'm going to show you the really cool shortcut, but we could come in, select lap 2, right? We could come in and select lap 2, turn off lap 4, and see that data. Here's a cool shortcut a lot of people don't know about if they use Race Studio, is I can come up and I can just double click on any of these min or max values that are in this table. And it's going to take the data directly to that. It's going to close lap 4. It's going to open lap 2. It's going to put the cursor exactly at where it was 37.6. So let's do it. If I come up here, I hover over that and I double click. You'll see that it just changed to lap 2 over here on the side. And it put the cursor right over here which happens to be, if you look, you get to the engine oil pressure, which is this trace over here. Look at that. It's right at where the minimum was. And now we could study in, heck, I could come off it just a tick, zoom in, and begin to try to understand why was the engine oil pressure right here at the low point. Why did it get all the way down to 37? Well, there was a huge loss of RPM in that corner. The driver didn't downshift earlier. The RPM dropped way down. It was not a direct lack of oil pressure. I'm going to resize this so we can see the RPM. It came down here, was really low. You can kind of see it chugging up where he was on the brakes, probably letting out the clutch. Something weird happened there on the way the RPM is coming up with the down in this area where he's dropping speed, but got way down on the RPM compared to what the car is used to, and the oil pressure drops down because it's based a little bit on the rotational speed of the engine, of course. So there isn't a big drop. It wasn't in a corner. It was in a straight line braking. We'll keep our eye on that to see if it does it in the future, but it's uh I think we understand it well enough to move on, right, in our data analysis. So vehicle health report. I'm going to jump back out to a full lap just so we can move on to the next one. I'm right at my time limit, but I wanted to go into one more thing, which is maybe the split report is something that a lot of you will want to use as drivers. This does nothing more than take the lap. This is the default splits for this track, Atlanta Motorsports Park, on our maps. But you can come in and change these by right clicking and unlocking, and I can change where these splits are in real time, and change them. And if you notice when I lock this, all of this has just been recalculated on the fly. This is telling you how much time did you spend in this first little segment. I'm not sure why we have that there, but we do. How much time did you spend on the second, the third, the fourth, and through the eighth? And how much time on each of the laps did you spend there? Also then goes into what we call the best rolling lap, which is if this has 8 segments, of course, we start them at the start finish line and end them at the finish line, and we break them up and show you the time in each of those segments and the overall time. But a really cool tool is we take, for what we call best rolling lap down here below, we take your best 8 segments in a row, regardless of where they started, not from the start finish line. Could have started over here exiting this carousel corner, right? Maybe it was over here, but in this case, the segment between 7 and 8, so right here on the track, even though the start finish line is up here, we calculated your time for you from here all the way around the track and back to here, because you had one segment that was the best. It was better than the rest of this lap that was really good. It was a 10.15. This was a 10.13, so it was a couple hundredths faster. We tell you that your best rolling lap was a 1:24.6, where your best actually lap was 1:24.64, and this was a 1:24.62 because of this difference in this one segment. That's number one way that you actually turned that lap. This driver is very good and consistent, so that wasn't a huge change. But the other one is the best theoretical that a lot of everybody wants to know, where we take the best, which happens to be the blue colored ones. We take each of these blue ones and we stitch those together as a single lap in the best theoretical. So boom, 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 boom. We put those together, and the car is theoretically capable of a 1:24.5 and 50, and the best the driver did was a 1:24.64, so about 14 hundredths that the driver actually did if you look at these as individual segments and then stitch those together. So lots of power there. And what's really cool is if you highlight a certain one, by clicking up here in the split report, it shows you on the map exactly where that split was and zooms in on it. So you can just click your way around and see visually exactly where that split is, and then see the data in it. So a very, very powerful tool. I'm going to go over here. I've more than used up my time. I love doing this stuff, and I could talk for hours, but sadly, I'm going to look back real quickly and see if there's a couple of questions, and then we're going to kind of start to wrap this up. Steering inputs are better. There might have been some that are higher than that. Is there any time frame for Race Studio 3 coming to Mac OS? It is something that we're working on. It's something we've taken a couple shots at. Right now, emulator is the only way. Your question, is there a time frame? I do not know of one. I don't think it's super high on the priority list with some other stuff that we're working on real quickly with a small software team. But I do know that is of importance to them, as well as Android and iOS apps. So that's something we've had 3 or 4 attempts at as well, and we just haven't got to what we feel is good enough to come out of beta and give to people. So working on both of those. Um, steering put How precise is the GPS data acquisition when looking at the racing lines on the circuit map? Do you have a small enough error? Do they have a small enough percentage of error? I'm going to go to Scratch real quick. I always have a tab up here that I don't care what I do. It starts with speed and RPM. Let me jump out to a full lap, and I can throw channels at it anytime I want, and then it always resets when I reload the profile back to this. So this is the one if I'm going to go in and monkey around, this is the one I do. Let's go in here and let's just talk real briefly on GPS accuracy. There we have a channel in our data that talks about what is the accuracy of this data. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to give that. I'm going to put that down to the third graph here. Let's change it to black real quickly, just so it stands out not only now but in the video later. This is the accuracy that, as you're driving around the track, we're looking at the number of satellites, their geometric location in the sky. It's always better to have GPS sensors in all 4 corners geometrically to get the best strength of the result. With all of that said, AiM is doing all that in real time, and it's telling you that right here where I've just clicked, the accuracy is about 0.9 of a foot. You know, we're talking a fairly small number. Always keep in mind that there's 2 different kinds of accuracies that you need to think of when you think of GPS and motorsports. There is positional accuracy. That's what we're looking at. We're guaranteeing you that, and I think it's 85% of the time. I think it's 1 sigma, which I think is 85, maybe 82. But no mathematician. But 82% of the time, we're going to be able to tell you that where we're telling you are in that millisecond is where you are on the face of the earth, and that can move depending on where you're at, what time of day, and other things. But that's positional accuracy of that one data point. But always think about how motorsports uses GPS is actually not on positional, a little bit on the map right down here, and we'll look at that in just a second. But we use GPS based information in a relative way. How accurate is the GPS data point that I just took versus the last 3 that I took, 25 samples per second, the last 25 of them over the last second? How close is each one of those relative to the one before it? And GPS, we don't give you a number for that, but that number is, we're talking millimeters, right, of accuracy between data points. That is how we can tell you exactly what this speed is, right, and have good confidence, and it matches your wheel speeds very, very well. And how we can calculate lateral G's. Let me turn that towards you see it real quickly. This is a calculated value from GPS. This is not, there's no sensor in our GPS sensors that is creating our GPS lateral and longitudinal G's. It's calculated from positions on the racetrack from the GPS information. Because we're looking at just the last data point and the one ahead of it, and that's how your change of direction, your speed, all of these different things, that's how we calculate this. It's because of relative accuracy to the data points. So don't get too hung up on positional accuracy, although when you look at a map, we really want to know where you're at on the track, right? And that is what you see as a generally in the data. All of this is kind of hidden from you, and it's super accurate. What your question really comes down to is how accurate is the GPS for here, and that's what this positional accuracy is. If you get a number that's up 5-6 feet, well, you may be shown driving over the curb, right? And if it does, don't get, well, here's a good example here, right? Let's talk about why this is happening. I know you can barely see that green probably, but it's off in the dirt, right? There's 2 different forms of accuracy that we need to talk about when we start looking at images on background images, data on images, and there is error in the GPS that we are providing for you, the GPS driven line, and there's error in the imagery that's in the background. I'm an old surveyor. That's what I did in my first career, and I did a lot of aerial imagery surveys, right, to get and they make that aerial imagery be as accurate as they can for the project that they did. So it's in the middle of the image. The farther out at the image with the curvature of the earth and all the rest of this, They're stretching and pulling it to make sure that it works for the paying customer when they created this, and that's all Google is doing, is bringing in all these different forms of images. This track could be close to where that data was really tight, and it could be outside where they're stretching it. If it's off, there's a chance that it could be the AIM data is what's pushing it off, and everything is shifted over 4 or 5 feet, or it could be the imagery in the background. That's why we give you these tiles to come in here and look at that. If I go to the don't remember here. I don't even know who that is, but that on that same exact corner is exactly probably where you're driving, right? This looks pretty good. A little bit off on this side, so there's a little bit of a shift in the images because I didn't change the GPS data. It's just the images on the background that we're looking at. So keep in mind that it might be the image in the background, or it might be the AIM data. If you get hung up on it and you can't get past doing that, I suggest you just turn this off. And when you start looking at a second lap, and we come in here and we start to look at where this driver was, let me change that to settings of the two different driven lines, color method, color per lap. So if we look at this now, and I'm trying to find a spot where right here is a good spot. You can see where the same driver in this case, but the two different laps, the driver attacked that track in two slightly different spots, right? And if we go to a corner where, again, this driver was actually pretty good. Let's look at this. Yeah, very much right on top of each other, right? There no a little bit of a change right there, a little bit of a difference. If that is bothersome to you that you're seeing that imagery and it's not quite right, maybe turn off the background image. That's another kind of cool tool if they're missing the apex by a bunch and it just can't, the driver you're working with, or you can't get past that, turn off the background image. It will help you understand the differences between the laps. So let's look at just a couple more. How do you cut the segments? I think I showed a little bit about that, but if you right click and unlock the splits, I can come up and I can do a whole bunch of things. I can divide that segment. I can get rid of all the segments. You can build your own, and you can actually even come in and rename this to that segment number 7. I'm going to call it Roger because I am that way. And so now that can be Roger. So it can be Oak Tree at VIR. It can be the Corkscrew at Laguna. It can be all these different named corners. I know in Europe, everything has a name, right? So we don't use numbers much over there. You can come in and change all of those to what you wish. How do you cut segments? You take into account yaw speed. I do. This is by default. I do come in and I look at where this corner, where this starts and starts this big long sweeper down here. If I jump back out, you'll see it. There's this big long sweeper, right? I may come in and put the cursor right where that is. And instead, Roger, I want that to be this big sweeper. Right click. It's still unlocked from before. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to grab that and I'm going to drag that right over to that. And that's where the driver is turning into that. And I'm going to grab this side and bring it right up here where it goes from maximum G and then comes up to and crosses over to 0 to the other direction. Roger, now, if I change this back, let's get rid of this guy. And I know I'm taking extra time, darn it. But I'm going to turn this, instead of the color method of per slice, if we're comparing two drivers, I'm going to go back to per split. And now, if we zoom in, you can see this red one is Roger, right where we're in. I now have a segment of from turn in to getting back to 0 before turning to the right. And now if that corner is a concern to you and you're trying to understand how you attack that and get better, now if we go to the split report, split times report, Roger is now the name of that segment, and it's recalculated everything for the amount of time. 19 seconds in that corner. It's a corner you probably want to get right next week when you're there. You want to check that and try some different entries and exits and middle, and boom, you end up with knowing exactly how fast you were compared to last time, and in laps through this particular session. And now you can see Roger is everywhere. If we go into everywhere, it's been changed everywhere in the software. So thank you for the question. Perfect. It makes sense now. Good. Roger. Will had a question at the very top. I'll check that in just a quick second, or maybe you can help me. We'll have our driver coach run through all of our data to track. I don't have a laptop. Run through. Okay. Coaches will help you review that. Perfect. I know you have some really, really good coaches, which is pretty cool. with that, David, if you turn on your mic and help me with that question, that was maybe at the beginning, the very top. Will had a question. I see now. I'll go see if I can find Will. If I don't find it, help me.
I just posted it in the bottom of the chat.
Bottom. Okay, let me jump back down to that, and we'll end on this one. How? Oh, I did talk about a little bit. How does AIM differentiate? I did chat a little bit about that. I don't want to go too deeply. We're analysis, but in reality, all of them do the same thing, right? Some do better in certain areas than others. But what today was really about was looking at the shape of the lines and the squiggly lines and understanding what they mean and how to hopefully help you, all of you, look at your own data, or when the coach tells you certain things, you'd be looking over their shoulder and have a pretty good idea what they're looking at. So and I know a lot of you come from sim racing where you're bringing the data and doing your own data analysis and preparation. Here's another way. And in closing, again, this particular data file, if you want it, there's links early on in this. There'll be links in, I'm going to send them to David. Some follow-up email he has will have them in it, and will also be in the YouTube video description down below if you're watching this later. All of the links for grabbing this data and this video file, and the user profile I set up, so you can set yours up like this to start with before you start to adjust it, and get in there and play with it. It's while there is some conceptual things that you want to maybe cover, it's not as difficult as it might seem if you just keep everything in the order of what happened, where it happened, why did it happen, and vehicle health, driver performance, vehicle performance. Keep that in mind. I'm going to jump into the presentation here and kind of close this up with a couple of quick things. We're 5 minutes away. Sorry again for going a little bit long. I think I was an hour 20 last time too, by the way, David, just but so I'm right on pace. I've talked about data and how cool it is and how it can really help you, and that data doesn't necessarily lie. We've seen that brake pressure release at the shift. The driver did it. I mean, it didn't lie, right? Maybe it's what the driver wanted. Maybe there's a hump in the track right there. I don't know, but the data showed something, right? I've got a few slides here where I'm going to show you that be careful that data can lie, and it's not racing data, but data is data in some level, right? There's this website that I've followed for years, tylervigan.com, and he goes out and finds all sorts of data sources that and then correlates them together, and he calls it spurious correlations. And the interesting thing is it does show in your mind, if you relate this back to motorsports data, be careful. I have been this guy that I've seen something, and in my own mind, I'd already made up my mind, and I was finding data to help me represent it. But don't do that. Let the data take you where it needs to go. In this case, let's have some fun with this. This is two data sets. Yeah, it's back a ways before some of you were probably born. But the the divorce rate in Maine per year is in red, and the per capita consumption of margarine in black. And look how they correspond. Look how they correlate. 2005, there was a lot less margarine that was taken, and there was a lot less divorces in Maine. So obviously these two are linked, and if people would just stop buying so much margarine, we would have less divorce in Maine. But obviously that's not true. But so rational thinking still comes into play, right? So you're going to see some stuff in data every once in a while that'll start to take you where you think you want to go, but come at it from a couple of different angles and make sure what you're seeing is correct. Let's go to the next one. Total revenue generated by arcades correlates with computer science doctorates awarded in the United States. Look at how many billions of dollars of revenue versus the number of degrees, and it matches almost exactly. So data can lie. Be careful. And the last one, people who drowned after falling out of a fishing boat correlates with the marriage rate in Kentucky. Some people say that this one actually might be correlated, but obviously it's not. Even silly data can correlate, but you need to use your racing judgment and common sense that allows you to use that data correctly, right? Common sense and racing knowledge and all of that is big, but if not, find another way in the data to look at kind of the same thing. Maybe you're looking at brake pressure. Maybe you go look at longitudinal G's. Maybe you look at why is the brake pressure doing that dip. We could have dug into that one driver's release out going into turn one, maybe there's a hump in the track. We can see that in the data. Maybe there's some rumble strips, and if we looked at the true accelerometers or the suspension pots, maybe we see that right there the driver has to release the brakes to keep some grip. Uh, th- Back in different ways and understand the data and the reason for it. Maybe it is what we said, which is just when he starts to downshift, he releases on the brake, and it's a habit. And he needs just to fix it. I did look in the data later. He does the same thing every lap, just so you know. The but let's kind of close this out with a couple of slides. Customer support. If you're here in the States, here in North America, anywhere, we here at AIM Sports, we're a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics, kind of the way we like to look at it. And if you're here in the States and North America, we have an 800 number. You have some email addresses you can contact us with. We're really all about helping you get the most out of what you're trying to do with our products and our software. So give us a holler if there's anything you need. We have these vans that go to events every single weekend. We have staff at tracks. We're not a huge company, but we send all of our techs almost every weekend there somewhere at some large event in North America. So the we also have these live webinars. There's a link that I provided earlier. David will, I'll give it to David. He'll send it out to you guys in an email as well. They're free Zoom based webinars where we all come together twice a month, and we have quite a worldwide organization that comes to these webinars. We started them at the very start of the pandemic and have just continued on with them. We're at 100 and the one coming up is number 174 that we've done. 174 of them we've done since March of 2020. And so we're in our 5th year of doing these. The next one, most of the time, they're very technical. We get in there, we talk about a function, a piece of hardware, something, right? And we dig in. I bring in software engineers or hardware AIM techs, users. We bring people in that can help us explain a specific thing. Every once in a while, we have a little bit of fun, and we talk with somebody that has done some things in motorsports, and we bring them in and have them talk about what they've done in motorsports with a tie to data, obviously. And the next one we're going to do is one of those. We don't do a ton of these, but they are fun. And we're going to have the 1990 Daytona 500 winner. Certainly this race happened before any of you were probably born, but we're gonna have Derek Cope join us, and he's gonna chat with us. He's mostly retired from racing in NASCAR and other forms of motorsports, but still deeply into motorsports, working with different teams, and he runs helps coach drivers and talks with them and uses AIM data a lot in karting and in some sports car stuff that he does. So Derek's going to come join us, talk a little bit about the big win that he had in the Daytona 500, and then talk about how he's using data to help this next generation of racers coming up. So that'll be on May 14th. For those of you in Europe, this is the middle of the night. I get it. The early one, the second Tuesday, we do late in the day. For us here in the States, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. The one that's at the end of the month, we still do at the time we did this one, which was 10 to 11, 22 Pacific in the morning, which is a little bit easier for those of you that are in Europe. So keep that in mind. So we'll have Derek next time, but you can join those. We'll give you the link to do that. All of the videos we do, including this one in the next few hours, will be up on YouTube. Got a ton of videos, not just our webinars, but other different things that you can do with AIM devices up on our YouTube site. Here is the link. If you can't remember it, just do a search for AIM data, and you'll find us very, very quickly. Some contact information. If you have some needs after this process or even before, contact me. There's some information down there in the bottom, my email address. I do these kind of Zoom things one-on-one with some groups of 3 or 4 people, teams or something. And then, of course, projects like this as well. So we do a lot of these kind of things. Give me a holler if there's anything I can do to help you with your AIM questions, especially software. That's where I'm the most helpful at. I can answer a few hardware questions, but mainly that. So I appreciate it. I'm gonna bring David back in with me for a moment, but I appreciate everything you guys are doing. It's a journey you're starting or partially through already, but really ramps up here in the next week, it sounds like. Good luck to everybody. And again, my son went through something a little bit similar, different, but close. But it's stressful, but it's boy oh so rewarding, and making great memories no matter which side of this you fall on. So keep that up. And David, give us a little bit about kind of help me close this out, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Roger. Appreciate you taking the time today to go through that and give everyone all these amazing resources to help them in their driver journeys. Yeah, we'll be kicking off Prodigy Week, Part 2, May 13th to 15th, Atlanta Motorsports Park. 20 of our drivers came from Prodigy Racing League Part 2 esports competitions. After this, we're going to take these 20 drivers and 12 from last year, and those 32 will be in the Prodigy draft. 24 drivers will be drafted onto teams within the Real World Prodigy Racing League series, and we'll have pro contracts. And we're going to kick off Season 2 esports here in the next month or so after Prodigy Week, and we'll be doing it again. So the Eat-A-Real journey is going great. So appreciate everyone's support.
Perfect. Glad to see you're doing it along with the other David, and perfect thing. I know you have a lot of help from other people as well, but the glad you guys were all able to come. Hope it's not too late at the night for some of you, but either way, really enjoyed you being here. Hope you guys got something out of it, and look forward to watching how you guys do. I will keep my eyes open and check the names. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks David for helping us put all this together, and best of luck in the next week or so. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.